I'm going to talk as I go about how mobile is the sleeping giant in multi-screen marketing campaigns, but we're also obviously going to focus at the end about how mobile is the sleeping giant in the multi-screen research world. The ad reaction product that I'm going to talk about is the core of the story. It's the biggest mobile research study that Millward Brown's conducted to date. So the agenda is, first of all, I'll give you a little bit of background to the story. The story of the research project itself got two parts to it. It's got insights into how mobile is used as part of a multi-screen mix. Then the second half of that story is about how mobile ads are perceived. And that's all kinds of mobile ads. And in particular here, we're not going to talk just about ads on mobiles, but also the role that mobile ads play in the multi-screen mix. So that's the first two chapters, and then the final kind of section is all about what have we learned from this project. So ad reaction is not a Millward Brown product. You can't buy it. We just give it away. It's a thought leadership study that we do every couple of years. It's been running for about 14 years now, and this was the 7th edition. Back in 2001, it was just a US-only study to look at what people thought of online ads and how those attitudes to online ads compared to TV ads and print and press and radio. It's grown, it's expanded initially out to about 7 countries, but then we also decided that rather than just keep banging out the same questions every year, maybe we should expand the learning from it. So in 2009, we did a deep dive into social media. 2012, we did a deep dive into mobile marketing, looking at apps and mobile websites and mobile advertising. This year, it extended it even further. So we were talking about mobile's role in the multi-screen mix. We were talking about 35 countries this year, so we not truly global, but close to global. We enhanced the quant study that has been the core of this with some qual. We built out an online deliverable for the first time. And the big step we'll come to right at the end is that we did the whole study on mobile. We did a bit of mobile research in 2012, but it was still primarily web-based. So that's the ad reaction kind of product. This time around, we ended up in 35 countries. That was about 17,000 multi-screen users. So the data I'll share is from multi-screen users. That means people don't just have a smartphone or a tablet. They also have access to a TV. The vast majority of this sample also had a laptop. And if you're ever doing a big global study, my top tip is always make sure you include Russia, Canada, USA, and Brazil, and then basically the map looks pretty full. All the countries in Europe, we did 12 countries in Europe, but you don't really get as much bang for your kind of your geographical buck there. These are the 12 European countries we did cover, though, and I'll give you a bit more insight into those countries in a second. Before I do that, we're going to play a video that's going to give you a rapid-fire overview of the study learnings. Do I need to click, or are you going to do that? So we launched those results earlier this year at the Festival of Media, and we've been discussing the results since with all of our clients in the channel optimization space. Lots of clients with Millward Brown work with Millward Brown to either optimize their media mix or to optimize within media to look at their digital channels or their mobile channels and how they can make their marketing smarter. To encourage you to, if you want to multi-screen at this point, if you get bored at any point in the next 15 minutes, do dial up millwardbrown.com/adreaction, check out the online deliverable. We're very proud that the online deliverable was shortlisted at the Digital Communication Awards. We worked with the Guardian design agency, who are now part of Kantar and called Graphic, to build it, and we think it is lovely. So that is another way of saying, I'm not going to give you all the data and all the numbers today, but you can take them all and look at them anytime you like. So let's just pick out a few of the numbers that were in that video and look at them more from a European perspective. So the global story is that smartphones are, this is not a small shift. This is not like sort of mobile eking up in people's usage, sort of 1 or 2% at a time. Mobiles globally have already overtaken TVs in terms of the amount of time people claim they're spending on them. To access the internet is the question we asked. So 35% of people's time globally. Among these multi-screen users, not a completely representative sample, and we'll come back to that at the end, but among these multi-screen users, 35% of their time is now smartphone. So or if you look at smartphones plus tablet in combination, you've got 47% of their total screen time is mobile. And obviously there's a massive, this is our Mary Meeker chart, there's a massive mismatch between time spent and media spend. So Zenith reckon that mobile spend is going to go from 4% this year up to about 12% of screen media spend by 2016. It really should be faster and more rapid than that. There's obviously all kinds of infrastructural reasons that it can't ramp up at the speed it probably should. But even so, that mismatch means that the mobile marketing will be a huge growth area for many years to come. It's not quite as dramatic in Europe as it is in other parts of the world. If you compare Europe with AMAP, smartphones are about 29%, so pretty much neck and neck with TVs and laptops, whereas in AMAP, smartphone usage is already ahead of TV. Just to give you a flavour of how much variation we get, there is a fair amount of variation, but so that in total is about 7 hours of screen time per an average multi-screen user around the world. That is as high as 9 hours in Indonesia and as low as just over 5 in Italy. TV minutes vary also a fair amount. UK and US are actually the biggest TV consuming markets, so we're clinging on to our TVs in the UK. Whereas it's down to about 90 minutes among this audience in Italy. Laptop minutes are still very high in China and Russia, pretty low in Germany, whereas smartphone minutes are highest in Nigeria and within Europe, highest in Germany. So some variation, but not, the broad story remains the same. What's very, very interesting is that if you look at the number of countries globally, among our 35 countries we did the study in 25 of them, smartphones are the lead screen now. But within Europe, only 3 of the 12 countries is smartphone already the primary screen. So Europe is slight laggards in that respect. In the UK, Spain and France, TV is still dominant. And this is partly because the audience we're talking to here is a fairly mainstream audience. Pretty much everyone's got a smartphone in Europe, and not everyone is a very active user. Whereas in the other markets, in AMAP, where we're talking to a slightly smaller penetration sample, smartphone users tend to be more advanced, and they tend to be more into their mobile devices. But even so, I think that's quite strange that we've got so many TV-dominant markets here in Europe. We talked about Russia being a high laptop market. Romania and Poland are also pretty similar. Czech, Hungary and Slovakia, we're calling them screen agnostics. What that really means is they've got their time fairly equally divided between TV, laptop and smartphone. And tablet usage is lowest generally among these 4 screens, but it's lowest of all in those 4 markets. Again, if you compare that with smartphone primary screen, the markets which are spending less time on tablets Italy, Turkey, and Germany are among the three of the markets where smartphones are really dominating. So that's just the basic time spent story. A bit of variation, but smartphones and secondarily tablets are part of our lives. What I particularly liked from Stephen's presentation was the idea that smartphones are a new way of getting to professionals, and that comes through in this data. So we were looking at it from a marketing opportunity, but from a research opportunity, same's true. It totally changes the access you have to people. So the red line, smartphones, is got a very similar shape to the laptop usage curve, picks up fairly early in the day, is used constantly throughout the day, and only drops off really when people are sleeping. But it's obviously a larger, much higher number of users throughout that day. So from 9 a.m. through till 6 p.m., you've suddenly got an advertising opportunity if you're a daytime product, which has got, but it's also a research targeting opportunity as well, I would imagine. For if we want to do studies in 12 hours, you know, that increases our chances of getting there. Tablets more mirror the TV curve, so much a milder version of it. They're slightly more of an evening activity than a daytime one for most people. We weren't just interested in screens in isolation. We wanted to focus on how the screens interconnected, and this is where the TV overlap story is very strong. About a third of all time, slightly less in Europe, a little bit more globally, is now TV plus another device. So that could be TV's on in the background and you're working on your laptop or on your smartphone, or it could be you're out in a pub with a bar, you're messing around on your smartphone, but there is a TV on in the background. So that's a third of all media time is people claiming they've got TV plus another digital device on the go at the same time. So that's this distracted attention. And we dived into that in a little bit more detail to split out very simplistically the good stuff from the bad stuff. So the bad stuff, if you like, is all of this stacking. If you're a marketeer and you've spent good money on a TV ad, the last thing you want is to know that people are actually on their laptop or on their smartphone during the ad break, or messing around on social media and not really paying any attention to what's happening on TV. The good stuff is the opportunity side, is the meshing. So there it's related content. People are actually chatting on social media about what's happening on TV. So I can't believe she's wearing that dress on X Factor, etc. But at the very bottom, the least popular reason in our survey was following up on a TV ad. So the opportunities are there for shazamming of TV ads and TV ads with hashtags and so on, but they've got an uphill battle to break through against all the distractions of the multi-screen environment. So that's how people are using the screens. We then spend a lot of time trying to help people understand, well, how and what works and what builds brands. The first thing that people need to understand, and this is the kind of core of the ad reaction product that we've been pushing for years, is that attitudes to different advertising formats are your start point. So you can have a great individual ad, but people have preconceptions of whether they like a different ad style or not. And people are generally comfortable with TV pretty much all the way around the world. In Europe, we're just grumpy about ads generally, but overall, people are happy with TV as they're used to them. Laptops have actually, receptivity levels have increased steadily over the last decade, but they got a bad name in the early days with pop-ups, and even though pop-ups are no more, still, those figures have risen. Laptop receptivity is lower than TV. 2 years ago, smartphones were lower still. I don't want anything, I don't want SMS ads, I don't want mobile display ads, I don't want mobile pop-ups. But now, in this study, mobile was pretty much on a par with laptops, so kind of moving in the right direction. And a lot of mobile advertising, the good stuff does go with the flow, is newsfeed based, is native, and so on. And I think is generally mobile is off to a reasonable start, but in danger of being too intrusive in some areas. So that's the backdrop. We're doing a whole load of effectiveness learning. We've done about 500 mobile ad effectiveness studies now. This, in one slide, summarizes how well it's doing. Regardless of what your brand objective is, awareness, impact on message, or delivering purchase intent, on the whole, smartphone and tablet ads are out punching online ads by quite a long way at the moment. Less cluttered environments, some quite high quality ad inventory, pretty good targeting. So that will decline. All new ad formats do brilliantly well in the first few years, and then as people get more used to them, they tune them out. But at the moment, mobile is very, very impactful and low cost. So really good place to spend if you can. Get the reach you need. And TV is still the big awareness-driving medium, but the other medium are building on top of that. So final learning from the study is, and this is the kind of really granular, juicy stuff, we also asked people about different ways, how receptive they are to individual ways that the screens can be connected. This is a little crosspart, so top right is the place to be, you want to be noticed, and also something that people like. And mobile dots are the ones that are really only possible because of they're multi-screen advertising approaches that are only possible because of mobile. So TV ads with URLs and TV ads with Facebook, well, you could do that before mobile devices came along, but you couldn't. And you can now, of course, watch Vines and watch Instagram videos online, but most people are watching them via mobiles. And it was a bit of a surprise for us that they were far more popular than anything else. But microvideo has this benefit right now that it's not seen as advertising. It's more native. It's generally user-generated content, and the brands that do well in the microvideo environment are doing well by being really creative and adding to the environment. They're not really pushed, so that the advertising models are still relatively new, and it's more organic content than pushed. So that's the framework there. And this was allowing us to talk to clients about, there are interactivity opportunities with TV ads, but it's tough to get them noticed, but if you can, people generally like them. So that's the kind of start point for our conversations with clients about how we can then help them devise good multi-screen marketing campaigns. Okay, last 5 minutes. I'll just give you a flavour now of how do we do the research, what have we learned from that? First big decision was why shall we leap to mobile or not? We had heritage of 10 years of insights. We were going to lose direct comparability if we leapt to this to mobile only. We were happy to make that leap because we've moved to this mindset that we want ad reaction to be topical and in the moment. So 2 or 3 of the 15 questions we ended up asking had been asked in previous studies. The other 12 were new. So that gave us the flexibility to leap. But we also were a bit worried about representativity, but then we convinced ourselves actually people that are able to do a survey on a smartphone or a tablet are also going to be the people that get what we're talking about. If we want them to understand what we mean by microvideo, we don't have to spend 5 minutes with like big long explanations telling us there's this thing called Vine. It sort of works a bit like this to people that don't actually know what a Vine is. So it was the right audience for us, and we were happy to leap, and that was the first step. We then had, this was the one which we had the most soul searching about. We kind of had to go, and this boiled down to ultimately feature phones in or out. And we plumped in the end for feature phones out. So unfortunately, our lady on the right there didn't make it. Now, that's because for us, homogeneity across the sample was more important than representativity within each country. We wanted to talk to smartphone, genuine multi-screen users who had the ability to do what I guess we would consider Western-style multi-screening around the world. So even though that meant that we had a representativity of about 15% in India and about 30% in South Africa, and we weren't as representative there, we were talking to the people that we were most interested in. And it was more mapping the future out for those markets, whereas it was maybe mapping out the present in the US, UK, but that was okay. We wanted that homogeneity. And that wouldn't always be the case, but for us, we were happy. We then had to obviously decide how we would do this, through panel or dynamic sampling. Or in the end, we went with on-device research, and they have a blended sampling approach, which is a combination of those 2 approaches. So some banner recruited and some panel-based interviewing. And that worked really nicely for us because it works in all markets. We could get out to all 35 countries, even where they only had quite small existing panels. They did a great job of getting the sample for us really, really quickly. So we were very happy with that. On-device also did all the scripting and processing for this particular study. And I think they would admit themselves. Alice is here, and I think they would admit themselves. They have both pros and cons to their survey platform. It's very light. It's very mobile friendly. It works very well over the web, mobile web, but it has come to a lot of restrictions on how much piping, routing, and so on you could do. So you have a time limit. You're doing some dynamic sampling, therefore you can only expect people to do up to 15 questions. You also have some, even within your 15 questions, you can't ask them quite as optimally as you would like. So that puts a lot of pressure on slimming down your exhaustive list of things we'd like to ask to get to the things you really can ask. We wanted to ask about multi-screen. We were really excited about talking about games consoles, outdoor digital screens, and so on. They didn't make the cut. We wanted to explore different moments in the day, how people feel when they're at work versus at home. That didn't make the cut. We wanted to look at how people, why and when do you put your laptop down and pick your smartphone up? We had to cut that. That was far too complicated for the time we had. And we had a whole long, everyone had their favorite classification question that they wanted to pop in, and we ended up with about 3. So it was tight, but it was good. And it was good because that was I've never spent as long on that design phase of any study, I don't think. We had charted out every single chart that was going to end up in the online deliverable before we went into field. And I don't think any client, in all the previous ad reaction studies, we just asked about 20 minutes of online questions, and we'd done a really sort of a very qualitative approach to the research. Where's the story? And that was what we ended up presenting. This was totally the other way around. What's the story going to be? What data do we need for that? And that's the only thing that qualifies. We also knew exactly the kind of style of deliverable we wanted. We loved the Google Mobile Planet and data board. We wanted that sort of mix of not a full infographic story, not a complete data geeks warehouse. We wanted a sort of a balanced, immersive data experience, so we knew the style and the content for our online deliverable was what drove what questions made the cut. And so we got to hopefully something that looks quite clean, is easy to use, but it was working back from that was how we got to the questions that made the cut. So do leap whenever you can. I mean, we were in a position where we could leap very easily because we wanted to go native. We wanted to understand fairly cutting-edge consumers, and we were more interested in tomorrow than today. But yeah, I mean, it's easy to say only put in what you need to get out, but it's actually that was the most painstaking part of this whole project was going through multiple iterations to get to those 15 questions. That was it.
Thank you very much, Duncan.
Okay.
So, have we got any questions from the floor for Duncan?
Aside from what's for lunch.
Yes. There's a microphone coming for you, just behind you.
Do you have any data on ad exposure differences between the different screens, if you will? So in other words, on TV, people see commercials, I don't know, 20% of the time, right? So they're exposed to ads quite a bit, whereas on mobile and laptop and desktop, maybe less frequently. Just looking for something to help kind of normalize the time spent on a screen and dollars spent on advertising on those outlets. Do you follow the question?
Yeah, so I mean, the Mary Meeker style slide up front was the spend, but in terms of the number of impressions that relates to, Canton Media would have most of that data, but what we have within Millward Brown is lots of cross-media study learning. So there we do reach and frequency assessments as well as brand impact assessments for campaigns, and from those we know that the average reach and frequency of a typical campaign for TV is usually about 2 to 3 times still the reach of the online elements. The mobile elements are still struggling to get up to 10% reach of the whole, but are hugely impactful among the smaller audiences they're hitting. Okay. So yeah, we have some of that answer. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks very much. Have we got any more questions? People are obviously wanting their lunch. Okay, in that case, thank you very much, Duncan.
I think there's one at the back.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Snuck it in.
I've already eaten.
Sorry for spoiling lunch. Sorry. Sasha, Lightspeed GMI. Amazing presentation, interesting process. Could you outline how long did it take from start to finish? Not the presentation, but the process, and what part was, let's say, longer in that, and what part was surprisingly shorter, maybe? It
ran from like Duncan, go do this, here's your money, in October last year through to public launch was middle of March, so the whole thing was 5 months. The research, we went at a breakneck pace to get the design sorted. That took us about 6 to 8 weeks, and the fieldwork was largely all done by February, and then it was about a month to get the online deliverable sorted. So I would say that was pretty quick for the biggest one of these we've ever done. Yeah.
Impressive. Thanks.